نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له نشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم. So I honestly had tears in my eyes listening to Sister Maryam and the sister also who gave the poem. I pray that one day I will see my own daughters as beautiful in spirit and in confidence and in presentation as the sisters that we have here tonight with us. So I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless all of our sisters here, our daughters, our wives, our mothers, and all of the women in our family, and all of the men as well. You know, the theme of the HHRD campaign to help bring more awareness to the SDP program is called Empowering Women, Empowering Lives. Now, oftentimes when we speak of the empowerment of women, there is a whole other sector of our community, namely the men, who will say, well, what about us? Don't we need to be empowered? What is this women, women, women? And we hear this often within our own communities. And we begin to question, why? Why do we discuss the concept of empowering women so frequently? Why is it so important and so central for us as an ummah to bond together and understand the importance of women in our society? And how does empowering the women in our society actually empower our entire community and our entire ummah? The truth of the matter is that every 15 seconds, a girl or a woman somewhere in the world is sexually assaulted, abused, or raped. More than a third of all the women worldwide, which is 35.6%, will experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. Women perform 66% of the world's work and produce 50% of its food, but earn only 10% of its income and own less than 1% of its land. Every year, 60 million girls are assaulted on their way to school. In fact, in some parts of the world, a young girl is more likely to be raped than she is to be educated. And these are just a few statistics that we have from around the world. But this is not our Islam. This is not our faith. This is not how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to treat our women. When we think of empowerment, we often think of it in terms of a human perspective. We concentrate on the term power, and we think of power in terms of control. But when we look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us in terms of empowerment of the self, we understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given each of us the gem of لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. There is no might or change or power except by Allah. This is the true empowerment, the understanding and the commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The understanding and the commitment to our purpose in this dunya, which is a purpose to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all that we do. When we look at the human interpretation of empowerment and concentrating on the word power, we see issues of control. We look around the world, we look around the Middle East, we look around Southeast Asia, we look at many of the Muslim countries, and we see a convoluted view of what power means. It is a struggle for control, a struggle to eliminate those individuals in the community who should be empowered through the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who could be empowered through education, who could be empowered by an ummah that stands together to help an entire community succeed. Yet we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that He will not change the condition of a people until they first change the condition of themselves. And so true empowerment in our ummah does not come from granting empowerment to anyone else. It doesn't come from empowering our women. It doesn't come from empowering our men. It comes from first understanding that true empowerment comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then it comes from understanding ourselves. How can we claim to love our ummah if we don't even love ourselves? How can we claim to want to help those around us when within our own communities we see so much brokenness? Constant putting down of one another because of culture, because of race, because of ethnicity, because of language. Constant tearing apart of our own ummah because we can't stand together. And yet we look at these countries overseas and we shake our heads and we say, so sad. We wonder why. But not long ago, in 2011, a young man by the name of Muhammad Bouazizi in Tunisia self-immolated. He burnt himself alive because he had so much pain. He struggled so much in his life, and he had called out to the ummah, but no one had responded. And so imagine the amount of pain that an individual must live with to take that step to burn himself alive. Where were we as an ummah? Where have we been? We wish for the change to come. We want to see a difference. But what are we doing on a one-on-one basis? How are we changing ourselves? How are we changing our communities? We've lost our sense of community. We've lost our sense of leadership because we've allowed our ego and our arrogance to grow to a point where it is no longer about pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it is about feeding the baser self and pleasing our own nafs. And so only when we rise above that base desire, when we go beyond that feeding of the nafs, do we begin to embark on a journey that will help the entire ummah. When we look at the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that surround us, we see the drop of water. The drop of water can be upon our faces a cool refreshment, or it can come down in droves, in rain that is siyul, that comes down and floods the areas around. It can come down as soft flakes of snow, or it can come down as sleet and hail. We as human beings are like that drop of water. We can come together for great good, or we can continue to fight against each other and avoid that which is good. You know, back home in New Jersey, there was a young gentleman recently who took the Shahada. And I was speaking to him and I asked him, I said, you know, what is it that made you love Islam? What brought you to Islam? And so he said, well, I decided to take the Shahada when I met Muhammad. And I thought he meant, you know, Muhammad in the masjid, or Muhammad, a friend of his, or, you know, a Muhammad from the community. And I said, Muhammad who? And he said, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so I said, how? I thought maybe he meant in a dream, or he had seen an image or something. And he said, I went to the masjid, and he named the masjid, the specific masjid in our community. He said it had been a long journey for me. I had gone to Buddhist temples, I had visited Hindu shrines, I had dabbled in Judaism, I had tried Catholicism and evangelicalism and Presbyterianism and all sorts of different faiths. And I couldn't find that peace. I couldn't find that faith that really connected me and made me feel that I was really worshipping the one God. And so he said it was Ramadan, one of the summer evenings, and I decided to enter a masjid. And as I entered the masjid, the adhan was reverberating throughout the hall. And so I sat down to wait and see what would happen next. And I looked over, and there was an older gentleman sitting beside me. And as the adhan rang through the prayer area, the man turned to me, and he had one date in his hand. And rather than breaking his fast on that date, he handed me the date.